Steve Jobs didn't just revolutionize personal computers or put a phone in everyone's pocket, he also saved Disney. But why would the man behind Apple care about animated films? And why would he give Pixar, the studio that was dominating Hollywood, to Disney? The answer is bigger than you think, and it changed the future of entertainment forever. By the early 2000s, Disney, the same studio that once defined animation with films like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, was facing a steep decline. Their animation department, the heart of their empire, was losing its magic. Box office flops like Treasure Planet and Home on the Range were signals that Disney had lost its creative edge. The company, once synonymous with animated brilliance, now seemed to be struggling to keep up. On the other side of the industry, Pixar was soaring. The studio had revolutionized computer animation with Toy Story and followed that success up with films like Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. Pixar wasn't just creating hit movies. No. They were setting the gold standard for the entire industry. And behind it all was none other than Steve Jobs, the man who saw the future of animation and wasn't afraid to bet big on it. But Pixar's relationship with Disney wasn't as smooth as its creative output. The two companies had been tied together through a distribution deal, but tensions were rising. Disney had distribution rights to Pixar's films, but Pixar's team, including Jobs, wasn't happy with how things were being run under Disney's then CEO, Michael Eisner. The partnership was strained, and Pixar was ready to walk away. And that's where our story begins, with Disney on the brink of losing one of its most valuable assets and Steve Jobs standing at the center of a high-stakes negotiation. A negotiation that would not only save Disney, but also turn Jobs into Disney's largest individual shareholder. Stick around as we dive into how Jobs' strategic thinking, Pixar's creative dominance, and Disney's desperation all came together in a $7.4 billion deal that changed the course of animation forever. Let's rewind a bit. In the mid-1990s, Disney was at its peak. Films like The Lion King and Aladdin weren't just box office successes, but they were cultural phenomenons. Disney's name was synonymous with animated excellence, and their traditional hand-drawn animation style was beloved worldwide. But as the new millennium approached, that success began to fade. A series of underwhelming releases made it clear that Disney had lost its touch. Films like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which I loved, by the way, and Treasure Planet failed to resonate with audiences, or most at least. The magic, it seemed, was disappearing. Unlike Economic Blueprint, that drops bangers every single video, click the subscribe button and get lighthearted business education in your feed every single week. Okay, back to Disney and Pixar. At the same time as things were going badly at Disney, something revolutionary was happening over at Pixar. Founded in 1986 by Ed Catmull and Alvy Ray Smith, Pixar was a small animation company with big ideas. But it wasn't until Steve Jobs stepped in that Pixar found its path to greatness. Jobs was fresh off his exit from Apple, and he saw potential in Pixar's technology and their creativity. And he bought the company from none other than George Lucas for $5 million and set out to turn it into a powerhouse. Pixar's breakthrough came with Toy Story in 1995, the first ever feature-length film made entirely with computer animation. And it was a game changer. Audiences were blown away by this new style of animation, and more importantly, they connected deeply with Pixar's storytelling. Toy Story wasn't just a technological marvel, although it was, but it was a heartwarming and universally relatable story that resonated with children and adults alike. Under Jobs' leadership, Pixar continued to innovate. A Bug's Life, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles followed, each one a massive success. Pixar had a unique blend of cutting-edge technology and emotionally rich storytelling that set them apart from traditional animation studios. So while Disney struggled to find their footing in a changing entertainment landscape, Pixar seemed to have cracked the code and really found their spot. But even with all this success, Pixar's relationship with Disney was becoming increasingly strained. The two companies had a 5-film distribution deal, which gave Disney the rights to distribute Pixar's films and claim a portion of the profits. It was a beneficial arrangement, at first. But as Pixar grew more powerful, Steve Jobs began to resent the terms of the deal. He believed that Pixar deserved more control, especially given that Pixar's films were largely responsible for keeping Disney's animation division afloat. By 2004, the partnership had reached a breaking point. Michael Eisner, Disney's CEO, wasn't willing to renegotiate the deal in Pixar's favor, and Jobs wasn't willing to back down either. Talks of severing ties were on the table. Pixar was ready to leave Disney behind and take its future into its own hands. This was a risky move for both companies, because Disney had relied heavily on Pixar's hits to maintain its position as a leader in animation, and without Pixar, Disney's already struggling animation division would collapse. On the other hand, Pixar faced the challenge of distributing its films without the backing of a media giant like Disney. But as tensions reached their peak, a new figure entered the scene, Bob Iger, who would soon become Disney's CEO, and he had a plan to save both companies. So far, Disney has been distributing Pixar's films for almost a decade, and those films were keeping Disney's animation division afloat. But Disney's own movies, they were pretty much flopping. But despite Pixar's critical and commercial success, tensions between the two companies were rising. At the center of the conflict was Disney's then CEO Michael Eisner and Steve Jobs, Pixar's largest shareholder and driving force. Eisner and Jobs had never really had the best working relationship. Jobs believed that Disney was undervaluing Pixar's contribution, and Pixar's team felt like they were being treated as second-class citizens in the partnership. To Jobs, Pixar's creative freedom was essential, and he resented the fact that Disney controlled the distribution of Pixar's films and took a significant portion of the profits. In 2004, the 5-film distribution deal between Disney and Pixar was nearing its end. Jobs was ready to pull Pixar out of the partnership entirely. He wanted Pixar to stand on its own, without Disney's oversight, and he was willing to take the risk of distributing future Pixar films independently. This was a bold move, but Jobs had the vision and the resources to make it happen. For Disney, on the other hand, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Without Pixar, Disney's already struggling animation division would be in even deeper trouble. Pixar's films were not only blockbusters, but they had become cultural phenomenon. Losing Pixar would mean losing the most valuable animation studio of its generation, and that is something that Disney simply couldn't afford. As negotiations between the two companies stalled, it looked like the partnership was beyond repair. But then, a new player entered the scene, Bob Iger, who was about to take over as Disney's CEO. Iger had a different vision for Disney's future, and he saw Pixar as the key to that vision. He knew that Disney's relationship with Pixar couldn't be mended with a new distribution deal. It needed to be something bigger, something transformative. In 2005, shortly before he officially became CEO, Iger attended Disneyland's 50th anniversary celebration. As he watched the parade of characters march down Main Street, he realized something striking. Almost all of the characters beloved by fans were from Pixar, not Disney. Buzz Lightyear, Woody, Nemo, these were Pixar creations, not Disney's. Iger knew, in that moment, that Disney's future depended on Pixar. So, rather than trying to negotiate another distribution deal, Iger proposed something that no one had expected. Disney would buy Pixar outright. This wasn't just about keeping Pixar in the fold, it was about making Pixar an equal partner and letting it lead the creative resurgence of Disney animation. But Iger knew that convincing Steve Jobs wouldn't be easy. Pixar had been preparing to go its own way, and Jobs wasn't going to hand over control of the studio he had nurtured so carefully without a fight. The stakes were high, so would Steve Jobs trust Disney enough to sell Pixar? And would Bob Iger be able to deliver a deal that preserved Pixar's creative independency while at the same time saving Disney's animation legacy? Bob Iger understood that if Disney was going to survive and thrive in the new era of animation, it needed more than just access to Pixar's films. It needed Pixar's leadership, its innovation, and its creative vision to breathe new life into Disney's struggling animation department. So in 2006, Disney finalized a deal to acquire Pixar for $7.4 billion. But this wasn't a typical acquisition. Steve Jobs had no interest in simply selling Pixar to Disney without guarantees. Jobs was fiercely protective of Pixar's creative independence, and he wasn't going to let Disney's corporate culture stifle the innovation that had made Pixar so incredibly successful. So under the terms of the deal, Pixar would maintain full creative control over its project, and its leaders, Ed Catmull and John Lasseter, would take on key roles in overseeing both Pixar and Disney animation. This wasn't just a financial transaction, it was a cultural merger. Pixar's innovative spirit would revitalize Disney's animation department, while Disney's vast distribution network would give Pixar the global reach it needed to continue producing groundbreaking films. For Disney, the payoff was immediate. The acquisition of Pixar sparked a creative resurgence at Disney Animation. Under the leadership of Lasseter and Catmull, Disney produced a string of hits that revitalized the brand's reputation. Films like Tangled and Frozen were massive successes, bringing back the magic that had defined Disney's earlier classics. By the way, did you know that Frozen came out in 2013? Jesus Christ, I feel old. Pixar, meanwhile, continued to thrive creatively, producing beloved films like Ratatouille, also another favorite, Up, and Toy Story 3. This was a win-win for both companies. But for Steve Jobs, the deal was about more than just financial success. It was deeply personal. Not only did the acquisition secure Pixar's creative future, but it also made Steve Jobs the largest individual shareholder in Disney. Jobs, the man who had been ousted from Apple in the 1980s, had not only returned to lead Apple's resurgence, but now had a major stake in one of the world's largest entertainment companies ever. The deal represented a moment of redemption for Jobs, a validation of his vision and his role in shaping the future of technology and entertainment. What many people don't realize is that behind the scenes, the Disney-Pixar deal was taking place during one of the most challenging periods in Steve Jobs' life. In 2004, just 2 years before the acquisition, Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. And for those of you who don't know, pancreatic cancer is most of the time just game over. Very few people knew about his illness at the time, and Jobs kept his diagnosis private, continuing to lead both Apple and Pixar through a critical period of growth and innovation. One of the few people Jobs confided in about his illness was none other than Bob Iger. During the negotiations, Jobs revealed his diagnosis to Iger before making it public. It was a deeply personal moment that reflected the trust and respect between the two men. Jobs, known for his relentless independence and control, was putting his faith in Iger to not only protect Pixar's future, but also to safeguard Steve Jobs' legacy. For Jobs, Pixar wasn't just another business venture, it was a passion project, a company that reflected his core values of innovation, creativity, and excellence. Jobs had nurtured Pixar from its early days as a small animation studio into one of the most influential creative forces in all of Hollywood. Selling Pixar wasn't just about securing a good deal, it was about ensuring that Pixar would remain a place where creativity could flourish, even under Disney's ownership. After the acquisition was finalized, Jobs sent a letter to Pixar's employees, reassuring them that their creative freedom was secure and that Pixar would remain true to its roots. Even as Disney's largest shareholder, Jobs continued to influence the direction of the company, playing a key role in shaping its future. The friendship between Jobs and Iger continued to grow after the acquisition, marked by mutual respect and shared vision. In his memoir, Iger would later recall the moment that Jobs confided in him about his illness, calling it one of the most emotional experiences of his career. Even as his health deteriorated, Jobs remained committed to both Apple and Pixar, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in technology and entertainment. In the end, the Disney-Pixar deal wasn't just about merging two companies, it was about preserving a legacy. Steve Jobs didn't just save Pixar, he helped save Disney. And in doing so, he ensured that his vision for the future of animation would live on long after he was gone. The Disney-Pixar deal was a turning point for the entertainment industry. For Disney, the acquisition brought new life into its animation department and restored the magic that had been missing for years. For Pixar, it was the chance to continue innovating and pushing boundaries of storytelling while maintaining its creative independence. But perhaps most importantly, the deal cemented Steve Jobs' legacy as one of the most influential figures in both technology and entertainment. As much as Jobs will be remembered for his work at Apple, his role in securing Pixar's future and transforming Disney was equally profound. Steve Jobs is often hailed as one of the most iconic founders of our time. But when it comes to the idea of founder mode, no one has made it more recognizable than Airbnb's Brian Chesky. After nearly losing control of his company, Chesky had to rebuild and reclaim his vision. Watch our video about Chesky's journey to see what founder mode truly means when the pressure is on.